What's up? Welcome back to the All Love, All Hate Fantasy Football Podcast. We're starting episode 7, and we're really glad that you're here to watch. I'm Jacob Reeder. This is my co-host,
Chris Langley.
Payton, Hedrick.
And let's get straight into weekly words. First, we'd like to talk about the Odell Beckham Jr. situation here. He was not claimed off of waivers. We know that now, reporting on Wednesday. And there are many teams in the mix, including Packers, Saints, Patriots are the leaders at the moment, as we believe. Seattle has also made a push for it. Kansas City and even other teams have been in the mix at some point. What do you guys think? I would personally like to see him on the Saints just because it's our home team and we don't have any receiving right now at the moment. So just to see him here at home would be cool. But what do you guys think? Where would you want to see him go? What's going on?
You can go first, Ben.
So, obviously, I would like Jacob said, I would like to see him on the Saints, but I think it would be like some of these teams, or most of these teams, it'd really kind of throw a wrench in things for fantasy. Because if he went to the Seahawks, we already got, most people are, if they got him, are starting DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. So that would just take some of the target share away from them. If he goes to Green Bay, we've seen, obviously, Devontae Adams. I don't think his target share is going to go down any. But you may see less targets for Robert Tonyan, less targets for Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Robert Tonyan's on the IR, so he tore his ACL.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
But that's all right. But you got Scantling, Lazard, Cobb, Rodgers, all these other guys.
He would supplement the targets that Tonyan might have gotten.
Right, so.
Yeah, you would definitely see their targets go down, which, it would just kind of mess up things for your roster most likely, unless you had Odell. Maybe you'd like him on Green Bay because from what we're looking at, that may be the best quarterback situation is in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers being the starter. But I think one place you really don't want to see him go for most people, if you have Odell on your roster, is probably the Patriots, just because they got a rookie QB who, really hasn't proven himself yet. Not saying he can't be a great quarterback and feed him the ball enough to have good fantasy output, but you're looking at Jacoby Myers right now, who really isn't doing a whole lot for your fantasy team. So I just don't think many Odell Beckham Jr. Fantasy owners, what's the word I'm trying to think of?
Managers.
Yeah, managers. Odell Beckham managers want to see him go there, but you may say the same about the Saints because they got a quarterback situation right now too.
Yeah, obviously I would love to have him on the Saints, especially because we're going to be without Michael Thomas for the rest of the year. That's like a major loss there because you need receiver help. And we don't have bad options, but we can always. OBJ would definitely be higher than some of the options there. Packers, is a very likely possibility, but if they do that, then this is basically the final all-in year. The last 2 years they made the NFC Championship and they lost both of those games. And who knows? Aaron Rodgers might be out by the end of this year. They did get Jordan Love a couple years ago, which is still.
We knew it was the last dance before the season started.
Yeah. I think this would eventually cement it for any doubters. And you had people that were still saying Rodgers might play out the rest of his contract, and then they bring in Love. But in terms of, Seattle, I don't think they need them. They have enough receiving core as is. Although since they are, 3-5 at the moment, and they're about to get Russell Wilson back, if they're going to want to make a deep push for the playoffs with just half the season left.
They're also getting Carson back this week.
That's true. Likely. He returned to practice, I believe, today.
Yeah, so I think he'll probably play this week.
And, if anything, Patriots, I wouldn't be that upset by it. Because I will say this, out of all the rookie quarterbacks that have played this year, Mac Jones has been the best one, by far. To be fair, Trey Lance hasn't really played much, and Zach Wilson's been injured for several weeks now. But between him, Fields, and Lawrence, Jones has definitely been the better quarterback in terms of the stats he's recorded and his play. The Patriots also though have a lot of receivers that are not elite receivers, but they're starting caliber receivers to a degree. They got Kobe Myers, like you said, they got Kendrick Bourne, they got Nelson Aguilar, and they got the duo tight end of Jonnu Smith and Hunter Henry. So they got options, but they don't have, like you said, a set wide receiver on one. And say what you want about Odell, he hasn't really been playing the best the last couple of years, but he has been injured quite a bit.
Yeah.
He could easily slide in as a wide receiver one on any of these teams except Seattle and Green Bay.
And if somehow Kansas City did sign him, he obviously wouldn't be the one over there, too.
Oh, for sure.
And, I mean, he might even be the 3.
Yeah.
So, going off of that, we're going to go back into Green Bay and talk about Aaron Rodgers. Last week he missed because of COVID. It was a big deal because it came out that he was unvaccinated. He had said some stuff that he was vaccinated or whatever the dilemma was, but he ended up being fined $15,000 for, I think it was like mass protocol that since he was an unvaccinated player, however, he wasn't wearing a mask in certain situations, something like that. The team, Green Bay, as an organization, was fined $300,000, which is a pretty hefty fine. And Aaron Rodgers even came out and said that there's a small possibility that he doesn't play this weekend. I'm sure he's going to play, even with all the drama that surrounds this story with him and COVID. And I believe he has to just test negative. His first day that he could possibly come back, I think it's Saturday, though.
Right, it's a 10-day protocol.
So the whole him possibly not being able to play, I could understand that just because he's not going to get any practice and he's just been sitting at home basically. So I could see it as a possibility, but highly unlikely.
Yeah.
Another
COVID case happening in the NFL is, again, I don't think there's been any team that's gotten the injury bug or like the COVID bug worse than the Cleveland Browns. And we saw it again this week because Nick Chubb, who I want to say just had a massive game last week, he had a really good game, he just tested positive for COVID, and 2 other running backs were also put on the reserve/COVID list. So right now their only starting option is Dearness Johnson, who did play pretty well in relief for both Chubb and Hunt.
Jarvis Landry also did not practice today.
Yeah, so that's man, I don't think there's any team that's gotten it worse than the Browns. But Chubb, however, can come back if he because he is vaccinated. If he tests negative on 2 tests, like within 2 days, like one day and one the next, he should be able to play. But I would say right now for like fantasy managers who are currently looking on the waivers, just for anybody to possibly replace an injury or a flex option, you might want to look at Dearness Johnson.
Yeah, he might be a good stream this week because if there's nobody else in that backfield,
right.
We saw what he did probably, 3 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago?
It was about 2
I think it was a Thursday night game,
yeah.
And he got over 15 points, I believe, in half-point PPR.
Like 17, maybe? I think, because I had him on my team. And
Yeah.
I still have him. I looked up at the projections today.
He'd be a good stream for just 1 week. But in other news, Dalvin Cook, he's going through a civil lawsuit right now, and Cook's team has come out and said that he is the victim. Other people have come out and said that he's not the victim. This is just something to kind of keep an eye on because NFL really doesn't treat this very lightly. So if it does come out that anything happened and he is found guilty or whatever it may be, he's going to see some suspension time in the NFL. And I mean, Alexander Mattison has already had to step up and be a pretty decent role player for a backup running back. So if he's not picked up, maybe it's something to look at, picking up Alexander Mattison off the waivers.
And it should be a mention because, believe it or not, I actually have Alexander Mattison in this league as well. The 2 games that he started, he got 20-plus points.
Yeah,
so he can come in relief for Cook, but I just don't know what's going to happen with Dalvin Cook because it's still too early. But it's definitely, like you said, something to watch out for the next. I wouldn't say probably it'll be the next couple of weeks because who knows how long it might take for the dispute to be settled. But so jumping away though from our normal news though, we are now at, I want to say it's week. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's week 10 or week 9.
It's week 10.
It's week 10. Okay, because the only reason I got that wrong is I couldn't remember when the bye week was for the Saints. I was trying to remember the record. So we're officially now at the halfway point. And with that being said, mid-season awards are coming out, and I happen to look at a few of them, and I want to get y'all's take on it regarding like who might be the favorites to win the awards if the season were to end today, or if the stats basically mirror to the second half. So MVP right now, according to the betting favorite that I saw, is a tie between Tom Brady and the Buffalo Bills quarterback Josh Allen, not the Jacksonville Jaguars linebacker Josh Allen, who blew up last week by sacking Josh Allen and also picking Josh Allen. That was an interesting day, to say the least. They're currently the favorites for MVP, but obviously you have guys like Kyler Murray, and actually I think it might just be those three. I don't think really any other player's been up there. I mean, you could have thrown Derrick Henry in there, but since he's going to be injured, he's out of it. So what do y'all think about that? Like, who out of those two who do y'all think would win it? Or do y'all have a dark horse favorite that you could see winning MVP?
So I think it's pretty interesting. I think when I looked at it, Kyler Murray and Josh Allen may have been tied for second. I think each with 4 votes or something like that.
That was, I think, the NFL midseason awards that like the NFL like staff for NFL.com.
Maybe so. I don't remember which site I was looking on or anything like that. But yeah, I really thought at this point in the year would be Josh Allen. I kind of thought since last year he was second place with 1 vote for MVP. And he had a pretty good season. I thought this year he's going to come out and be a lot better than he has been these last few weeks at least. So I'd be really interested to see how Josh Allen finishes the season, but you really can't discredit how well Tom Brady and the Bucs have been playing.
Right.
So if he wins, it would be of no surprise really at this point.
Yeah. Jacob?
Yeah, I'd have to give it to Kyler Murray. He's the quarterback on the best team in the league at the moment. Believe they still have the best record in the league.
I want to say they're tied for the best record because I think Green Bay's tied with them. Although I think
Green Bay is 7-2.
Yeah.
But also
that's right. They lost
beat
the Chiefs. That's right. So that's
Green
right.
Bay
so
beat Arizona. Yeah. So, I mean, say what you want, whether you think Green Bay's better, but Green Bay also lost to the Saints pretty miserably, and it wasn't a very good.
Every team is every like good team this year's definitely had like that one like terrible loss that we saw. And like Packers, it was against the Saints, and then Rams just lost to the Titans. So I mean, it's definitely possible like MVP, but I agree with you. I think Kyler Murray may be the third best favorite out of them because it's really I think at this point it's between them. Although I just remember this because you mentioned NFC West, Matthew Stafford could also be in there. I mean, especially because he came in and he played really well in Detroit, but now he's on like an offense that has stuff ready at his disposal, like Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods. Darrell Henderson, Tyler Higbee, he's been playing so much better, and he could be leading the Rams potentially to winning the division.
I will say that one of those Rams players being Cooper Kupp or Matthew Stafford, I think one of those two definitely at least deserve Offensive Player of the Year.
Yeah, I think Cooper Kupp is the favorite for that.
Yeah,
right now.
and I mean, you can't really argue that how dynamic he's been in that offense and how well they've been able to play with that. And I really think that as of right now, Cooper Kupp probably definitely deserves Offensive Player of the Year.
He's on pace to break 2,000 yards, which has never happened in NFL history. Although, again, granted, we do have an extra game, so. But, I mean, he's leading right now in all 3 stats, I believe. Receptions, receiving yards, and touchdowns. I mean, we've only seen a wide receiver win Offensive Player of the Year twice. Jerry Rice and Michael Thomas. Cooper Kupp could be the third, and he might have a legitimate argument to win it. He might be the guy that takes it and runs away with it. But for the other awards, for Rookie of the Year, I feel like that one's more or less going to be, unless injuries happen, those are kind of set in stone. Offensive Rookie of the Year, that's obviously going to be Jamar at this point. Although someone could make the argument, depending on how the team goes, let's say the Bengals do fall off, somehow Mac Jones usurping them. I don't see it happening, but it's possible. And then Defensive Rookie of the Year, it's either going to be Micah Parsons or Patrick Surtain. It's going to be one of those two. But Defensive Player of the Year, if y'all have to take a guess, though, who do you guys think has been playing this good this year? I've been seeing Myles Garrett and T.J. Watt as the front runners. I mean, Myles Garrett, I think, is on pace to get like 25 sacks, which would be a new record for a season. But yeah, like, what do y'all think? Who do y'all think could be potentially Defensive Player of the Year?
I'd like to see T.J. Watt win it. I like him as a guy, just as a player. He's fun to watch. Another guy is Trevon Diggs, just how locked down he's been and how many interceptions he's had throughout the first half of the season's
He said
insane.
7 picks.
So,
he's halfway to the record for the season.
Yeah, those are the guys that I would like to see in the mix at least. Trevon Diggs, a newer name to this landscape, and T.J. Watt.
Yeah. Payne, what do you got?
So, I was looking at this one earlier too, and I saw that Myles Garrett was first in the running. But what was pretty, I mean, he only had 1 vote, but what was pretty surprising was to see Jalen Ramsey still up in there. I mean, I know he's a great defensive back, and he's been playing pretty well, but I just thought that was a bit odd that he was getting a vote still, because personally I think T.J. Watt has been kind of going insane. And just watching his game last week and seeing how big of a part he is in that defensive line and how he can really, like, get the whole defense in, like, close game situations and the end-of-game situations, how he can just get the whole defense to rally behind him and just, like, kind of turn things around for that defense. I think it's should be recognized, and I think T.J. Watt should win this, assuming he doesn't get hurt and can finish the season strong.
Yeah. I mean, we still got second half of the season to go. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens. To close out Weekly Words, though, there is one story that I do want to make note of just for a small second, and it's very, very sad news to a Saints fan. We saw the Jets release Thomas Morstead. That is a little unfortunate, but I hope he gets a new opportunity because he's my second favorite state behind Drew Brees. But with that, we're going to be heading not to Girl Talk this week, but instead we're going to have a return to a segment we sadly didn't have last week, and that is the Bourbon Bowl. All right, guys, welcome back to the Bourbon Bowl. Kind of happy we have it back. It felt a little weird last week not having it. This week, for my Bourbon Bowl pick, I'm going to just go back to this typical team versus team instead of it being a player-on-player matchup or a fantasy matchup. This week, I have the Seahawks versus the Packers. Now, that game would have been interesting at the very beginning of the year, but it seems like both teams have a little, or at least like going in with some question marks regarding this week because, again, we don't know what Rodgers' status is going to be, but we also know what Wilson's status is going to be. I'm pretty sure Wilson returned to practice this week, if I remember correctly. He's been out since week 5 after injuring his middle finger or index finger against the Rams. And, I mean, Seahawks have only gotten, I think, 1 win since then with Geno Smith as the backup. And
who really hasn't been looking all that bad. I mean,
yeah,
obviously he doesn't have the arm power that Russell Wilson has, but he's been pretty impressive.
Yeah, see, he's definitely been holding his own to a degree. But I don't know how much of that's also the Seahawks defense maybe holding back. Although the Seahawks defense did play pretty well against the Saints. But going into this game, it's basically a coin toss right now because again, it just really depends on who's available. If Wilson comes back and Rodgers doesn't, then I can see the Seahawks potentially taking this game. But if Rodgers comes back, and regardless of whether Wilson's playing or not, I think the Packers can take it. So as of right now, I'm just going to take the safe bet and say Green Bay's going to win. But again, that solely depends on what happens with Rodgers and what happens with Wilson. What do you got?
Yeah, I'll take the Packers too, as long as even if both teams are completely fully healthy, I'm taking Packers. So.
Okay. Payton?
If both teams are completely healthy, meaning that Carson and Wilson come back, if they both play, I think that Seattle's going to win this game because, I mean, whether Aaron Rodgers plays or not, which I think he will, just so much in the media this week about him, I think it's going to kind of rattle his head a little bit and maybe throw off the game plan and kind of affect the game. So I'm going to say that Seahawks win this one.
Okay.
All right, straight into my Bourbon Bowl pick. This week we got an interdivisional matchup between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Las Vegas Raiders. As you guys know, 2 of the best tight ends in the league play on those respective teams. So that's my Bourbon Bowl matchup is Darren Waller versus Travis Kelce. Hopefully it's a shootout, which it should be. Kansas City's defense not too great, and I don't think the Raiders are anything hot either. So I'd like to see them score a lot of fantasy points and just have a high-scoring game and see a shootout and see who can get the most receiving yards or touchdowns, whatever it is, out of that group. I'll say Kelce has a better receiving game than Darren Waller.
Yeah. I'll agree with that, mainly because Waller hasn't really looked like himself the last few weeks. But then again, Who knows? It seems like every year the Raiders are like the Chiefs' kryptonite with just like Raiders always like manage to get a win against them like every year, especially since Mahomes has been here. It's like I don't know if like the Raiders just have like their number dialed like each time, kind of like how the Giants would always have their number dialed when they would play the Patriots back in like the early 2010s. So I'll agree with you. I think Kelsey will get it just because Kelsey I think is going to be used more in the offense, but should be a shootout. Both teams have very explosive offenses, and I think it'll be a great game, regardless of who gets the most points, but I'll go with Kelsey. Payton, what you got?
See, I'm going to go against both of y'all again. So this matchup's going to come up in my hot take, but basically I think if the Raiders want to have a shot at winning this game, they got to get the ball to Darren Waller. And I just think that whether they win or not, I think that that's going to be in their game plan because we really haven't seen him really incorporated a whole lot these last few weeks. Granted, he's been kind of banged up and whatnot, but I think that Darren Waller is going to have, a decent game. I think he'll probably do better than Kelsey. But my Bourbon Bowl matchup is going to be in the Eagles versus Broncos game. And we got two young wide receivers to watch here. We got Jerry Jeudy and Devonta Smith, both 22 years old, not in the same draft class, but they are the same age.
And they're both from Bama.
Yes. I was going to say that next.
I'm sorry, man.
All good. So.
All good or all love?
Don't do this to me right now.
I'm sorry.
So, Jerry Jeudy has been dealing with some injuries, and Devonta Smith has been playing well, but he hasn't been playing great. Jalen Hurts somehow figures out how to score 25-plus fantasy points, even going into the third quarter with 10 fantasy points. But anyway, that being said, I think Devonta Smith has a better game and scores more fantasy points than Jerry Jeudy. And I think that the Eagles edge a victory in this one. What about you guys?
I'll take the Eagles winning, but I'm going to go Jeudy with more fantasy points.
Okay. I'll go with Eagles winning. Although Broncos did stun the Cowboys last week, so anything's possible. But I think I'm going to go with Smith just because I feel like he's being used more in that offense now compared to Jeudy, especially since Judy's just got back and Broncos still have options there with Cortland Sutton, Melvin Gordon, Javonte Williams, and I want to say he's playing this week, but I could be wrong. Noah Fant.
He might be in Tim Patrick too.
I think he got activated off the COVID list, right? Wasn't he on the COVID list?
I believe so. That's why I think he missed last game, but I don't know if he's going to come back for this game.
Tim Patrick has been
that's true. Tim Patrick
big target too. So.
Yes, I think Devontae Smith might get it, and I think he will help lead the Eagles to win, and the Broncos will not have 2 straight wins against an NFC East opponent. But that will conclude the Bourbon Bowl. The Mud Dogs won the Bourbon Bowl. Never forget that. Let's just hop right into our last segment, which is Hot Takes.
That's a spicy meatball.
All right, so we're going to get into the Hot Takes section of this week's episode. And last week, we were all wrong again. So, we're not doing too hot with our hot takes.
I'm still looking for a dang win.
Yeah.
At least you guys got a win already.
Yeah. It's been pretty rough this year. But going back on something that Jacob covered in the Bourbon Bowl, I'm going back into the Chiefs versus Raiders game. He talked about tight ends. I'm going to talk about a wide receiver. One wide receiver in particular being Tyreek Hill. I think that this is a big game for the Raiders. It's a division opponent. And really, right now, the Raiders still have a chance of winning the division, really. And, we could see the Raiders, the Chargers, and Kansas City all go to the playoffs, technically.
Maybe even Broncos, too.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy to think about. But we really haven't seen Mahomes and the Chiefs step up and really show us how we've been seeing them play these last couple of years and really prove that they are the real deal. So I think that Tyreek Hill this week has he breaks 100 receiving yards. That's my hot take, that he breaks 100 receiving yards. What do you guys think?
I think it's fairly possible. He can easily get 100 yards like any given week. But also don't forget, I'm pretty sure the Raiders just released who I believe was their cornerback one, which was Damon Arnett.
Yeah.
So I don't know who's going to be going up against them. They might have 2 guys. They might double team him just out of precaution.
Safety over the top.
Or they might double team Kelsey.
Yeah, they'll have a safety over the top to help Tyreek, but
Right. I think it's
we'll
possible.
see.
I think it's fairly possible. He can easily get 70 yards to someone play.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like I think it's very, very likely, and I think it's definitely
It's doable,
easy win.
and I think the
Yeah.
Chiefs kind of need to pull something out, especially against a division opponent, to really kind of maybe get the ball rolling is the right way to put it, because if they don't start figuring something out soon, the playoffs are going to get more and more out of reach, and it's just going to be tougher if they do make it to the playoffs for them to win. So.
This is a game they must win because, again, the division record is going to be key, especially with this.
Yeah, I think the
powerhouse.
the Raiders have a win over the Chargers already, correct? Did the Raiders beat the Chargers?
I think the Chargers beat them, but I'm pretty sure the Raiders have also beaten the Broncos. But I don't know if the Broncos have played. Actually, let's check.
As we're checking that, I'm going to get into my hot take real quick. I'm going to take A.J. Brown, who had a pretty solid week this past week. He's playing the New Orleans Saints, our hometown team, but they have been actually very giving to receivers and tight ends this season. So I'm going to go A.J. Brown as a top 5 fantasy wide receiver this week. Without Henry, obviously, they're going to be throwing the ball a lot, just like they did last week, and that's who I'm going to pick. A.J. Brown is a top 5 fantasy wide receiver.
It's pretty possible considering what happened with Cordell Patterson last week.
Exactly.
I really wish it was Kyle Pitts for my own personal sake with the hot take, but I guess it couldn't happen. But to answer your question, I did check. The Chargers won that game. But if you look at the schedule right here, I'm looking.
They play them again.
Yeah, Raiders they play them again, and the Raiders have beaten the Broncos. And, I don't know how important these are going to be, but they did beat the Ravens and the Steelers, which are key AFC matchups.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's fairly possible for the Raiders to win the division, but basically every team needs to win division games. That's all it's going to come down to.
Yeah.
So to close out the hot takes, I'll go to mine. I'm still like I said, I'm still desperately looking for a win, but at this point, I don't even care what my hot take is. I'm just going to wing it. There is one player that I've been keeping my eye on this entire season because I have him in my other league, and he's now officially became my wide receiver number 1, and that is the second-year player for the Colts, Michael Pittman Jr. He had a pretty good game last week. He actually had some pretty explosive weeks earlier this season. He was definitely filling in well for T.Y. Hilton. I think he's even filled in well for him since he's been back. So they were playing the Jaguars this week. Jaguars, they did just beat the Bills. But again, it's any given Sunday. I think last week showed that any team can win on any given Sunday with the amount of upsets there were. But I think Pittman's going to have a good game. I give it in a PPR league, 20 points. I think he'll either get 20 points or he'll break 20 points. Here's hoping it happens because I'm really starting to worry I might be winless the entire season, and I know I'll never live that down.
Yeah, we'll have to see. As we said, we were 0-3 last week. We didn't have a guest. We're going to try to turn it around this week, those hot takes. We're happy that you watched. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and see you next week.